Rania, you have been dutifully following the kind of hour by hour, minute by minute developments in Iran. We saw massive escalation yesterday, despite signs that perhaps peace talks were going well. So, before, just to give us this basic grounding, what is going on? What prompted this latest escalation? Where is the war headed? And is diplomacy still an option?
So as I was watching the Knicks game yesterday, I was between during the timeouts, which there were many, and in between the quarters, I was looking at another game, and that is the game of war that America is trying to play with Iran, because it was really like minute by minute changing last night. Over the last few days, you've had a massive escalation, dramatic, really, really dramatic, with the U.S. basically resuming massive bombings across the country of Iran, including, by the way, drinking water facilities in the south a couple nights ago that left 20,000 Iranians without access to clean water to drink. Just a blatant war crime. Iran, of course, retaliated by completely closing the Strait of Hormuz yesterday because there was another series of bombings, which Trump this morning bragged that he dropped $250 million worth of bombs on Iran last night. Imagine that, $250 million of bombs dropped on Iran last night, and then bragging about it while he's also bragging that inflation is up, and that's a great thing. And inflation is up because of his policies. And one of the many policies being the fact that he started this disastrous war that has led to the closing, excuse me, of the Strait of Hormuz, which has led to an increase in oil prices, and also fertilizer and all kinds of other things that go through the strait. That's a very, very important trading point in the world that now Iran has had to retaliate against the U.S. and close. So the Iranians closed the strait completely again, and also have been striking Kuwait, Bahrain, and Jordan, which host U.S. military assets and have helped the U.S. in the war on Iran, which is why that's who they retaliate against. And then this morning, we woke up to a Truth Social post of Trump threatening to hit Iran again and hit Iran hard. It's worth reading his post because it's so criminal and insane. He said, the United States will be hitting Iran, whose Navy, Air Force, radar, anti-aircraft, and all other forms of defense, together with most of its offensive capabilities, are gone! Exclamation point. Very hard tonight. Also, all in all caps. We'll be hitting Iran very hard tonight. At some point in the not too distant future, we will be taking Karg Island and other oil infrastructure points and assume total control of their oil and gas markets, much like we have with Venezuela, which is working out brilliantly for both Venezuela and the United States of America. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. So it's kind of amazing. That's Trump basically announcing that the U.S. will be bombing Iran very hard tonight, and that the mission is actually the theft of their oil. And I guess that's how you can really understand the year 2026. It's one where, the monsters of the universe declare war crimes openly. And they know they can because the world is too backwards and cowardly to stop them. But more importantly, this was initially prompted, the U.S. will tell you, by Iran downing a U.S. Apache helicopter a few days ago in the Strait of Hormuz. But the Iranians said that that was an accident, and that also, why was a U.S. Apache helicopter patrolling the Strait of Hormuz to begin with? And also, just like another side point to let you know how insane the U.S. is being right now, they also, I still can't believe this, the U.S. apparently struck an Indian ship off the coast of Oman, killing 3 Indian sailors, and this is believed to be the result of U.S. operations to blockade Iranian ports. So if I was India, I'd be pretty pissed right now that the U.S. just struck one of my vessels and killed a bunch of my citizens who are sailing that vessel. But just to go back, this is a massive escalation. There has been some tit for tat throughout this period of supposed ceasefire between the Americans and Iranians. But at this point, I'm not sure you can continue to call this any sort of ceasefire, because it's kind of back to 2 months ago where you had the U.S. bombing Iran directly, and Iran retaliating against U.S. assets in the region. So we're kind of back at square one. And I'll just stop there if you want, let you tell me where to take it next.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's very important for people to kind of understand what the lead up has been and what has happened in the last 24 hours, because on one hand, it's a lot of the same things and a lot of the same threats. But as you say, rightfully so, it's also a major escalation. And, you point out that India should be quite mad. Yesterday, I saw Narendra Modi post something just really praising Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. So it seems like he's still kind of transfixed, enchanted by the U.S. Israel duo for some reason, despite the fact that it is literally completely against his interest. So, Rania, you, again, talk about how a lot of these things have been kind of repeating themselves. And it does seem like Trump is trying the same things over and over again. Okay, we're going to strike hard. We're going to take out Kharg Island. We're going to go after the infrastructure, which are threats that he's made before. So would you say is Trump stuck? What is the end game? And does he even have one?
No, I don't think Trump has an end game. And yes, he's absolutely frustrated and stuck. And we're even hearing it from media reports that this is basically the administration, Trump specifically, not really knowing what to do next. He's pissed off because Iran is not capitulating and he can't understand why. Like in his mind, he's just like, we keep bombing them and they're not capitulating. They're still making the same demands. They won't give up nuclear enrichment. They won't, stop demanding we let go of their frozen assets that the Americans have seized and basically stolen. And they're still demanding a ceasefire in Lebanon. And, he's trying to get a better deal than Obama got. And doing all of this has done nothing but ruin America's standing in the region, destroyed American assets across the region. And the U.S., the longer this goes on, the more the global economy gets screwed and collapses, and the more it's going to blow back on Donald Trump politically, because he doesn't have a victory here. It's actually a loss. It's an American loss. He could not get these people to submit, which is why he keeps changing the goalposts of what he even wants here. Overthrow the regime, okay, but you killed their entire leadership. There's still a Khamenei in power, the son of Khamenei, and on top of that, it's still a functioning country. The longer the strait is, like the Strait of Hormuz, like they didn't even understand that it would be shut down, and it was shut down, and then the goal became to reopen it. They haven't been able to do that. And also, let's not forget about the interceptors. All of these interceptors that have been used to try to shoot down these really cheap Iranian drones and Iranian ballistic missiles, which they're firing again, by the way. These interceptors are running really, really low now to like critical levels. So that's why time is on Iran's side as well, because if the U.S. resumes this war, really, and we see what we saw last night every single day, if there's like 100 interceptors left in Kuwait, then your base, after 100 more Iranian drones needing to be shot down, your base is open. It's naked. It's open for Iranian fire. The same goes in Bahrain. The same goes in Jordan. The same goes in Saudi Arabia. The same goes in the Emirates. The same goes for the Israelis, which were also running low on interceptors. So again, time is on Iran's side. Trump is running out of options, but his only options are, the longer he waits this out, the only options are to either just call it a quits, accept that you basically lost, and compromise with Iran. That's the most reasonable option if you're not a psychopath, and if you're a little bit smart. The other option is to dig in deeper, screw over a lot more people in the world, and come out a bigger loser later. Because if he goes through with what he said today, when he talks about seizing Kharg Island, which was where Iran's oil, most of its oil is extracted and kept, right? It's where its oil industry is. That would require a ground invasion. So you're telling me you're going to send U.S. ground troops to Iran when this war is already so unpopular? If you have American body bags coming home, you'll actually have street protests against this war, which you haven't really had so far because everyone's against it. But like, other than gas prices going up a bit, you haven't had dramatic impacts of this war felt in the U.S. because so far it's an air war. But the second you turn it into a U.S. ground invasion, that's a totally different story. And as for the Iranians options are also to either keep defending themselves if they are forced to, or and wait it out, or to win now. And I mean, winning is like, it's a subjective word in what you think winning means. But if it means the U.S. losing, then it's basically a win for Iran. That's how I see it. Because the thing about Iran is the U.S. is strangling their economy, but their economy has survived sanctions for several decades. They know how to survive economic strangulation. And they also have other countries helping them with bringing things into the country. And they also still are able to get some ships out in the Strait of Hormuz to export their oil. And they exported a ton of oil before the U.S. began their blockade. And then the whole idea of using the Iranian population to rise up against the U.S., that's in the toilet now. That's in the trash. The U.S. tried. It didn't work. And now the Iranian population hates the U.S. more than it ever has because the U.S. has been bombing their school children and destroying their infrastructure. So,
well, yeah. I mean, there's...
Trump is stuck between a rock and a hard place here.
No, he is. And, it's interesting that you say that they're, even threatening a ground invasion, because at the same time we saw just 2 days ago, Pete Hegseth was in the U.S. Military base on Guantanamo Bay, which is in Cuba, already making threats against Cuba. So the Trump administration, I do not think, has the capacity to wage this many wars on this many fronts, and we'll see where they kind of put their resources. I wanted to mention one thing before asking one final question, Rania, which is that, great guest that we've had on a lot, Trita Parsi, who you've interviewed several times. Today, news has broken that he's being investigated. He is a Iranian and Swedish citizen, I believe, and now there's kind of questions into whether his green card status will be revoked. And he has been, a pretty loud voice in criticizing this war, but really explaining what's behind it. You've had many conversations around this. What do you make of this, that, even like a mainstream anti-war voice is facing this kind of, in lack of a better word, political persecution?
This is completely desperate and cruel. Trita is not some marginal figure. He is pretty mainstream, actually. And it's because, his analysis is on point. Like, we've had him on a bunch of times. He's very good. He understands the situations. He has sources both on the Iranian and the American side. So that's why his analysis is impeccable, because he's talking to people constantly. And he's constantly giving interviews. He's done interviews here on Breakthrough News. He's done interviews on CNN. He runs the Quincy Institute, which really balances out this kind of right-left, anti-war sentiment that we see taking place across the spectrum. So I think it's really desperate to kind of knock out somebody who's been really effective. I hope, if they really were to deport Trita, they're going to send him to Sweden. He's still going to give interviews from there. I'm not sure what they think that's going to do. I guess they're trying to intimidate him so they'll shut up. It shows how effective he's been, just calling out how ridiculous and illogical and outrageous and criminal this war is. But on top of that, I think it's sort of, demonstrates that this administration is stupid, because Trita is somebody who people across the board are going to come out and defend. Like, people on the left and right are going to be like, this is really outrageous. Like, what has this guy done? It also just speaks to the authoritarian, anti-democratic nature of this administration, that they have continued to go after people who, having a green card is supposed to basically be like being an American citizen, but trying to strip people of their rights based on their political beliefs. And that's exactly what's happening here. This is a part of what we've seen them doing first over Palestine, and I guess now on Iran. And I guess I would also say this probably was lobbied for by the Iranian monarchists, who have been pushing for this war, who Trita has spoken out against. And that is a nasty crew of people that will pull all levers they can to destroy your life. Solidarity with Trita.
Definitely. It's definitely heinous, and it's interesting because this war is already so unpopular. And, the outcry that took place last year when Mahmoud was detained, when Rumeysa was detained, when Mohsen Mandawi was detained was so strong. I don't think they really are making the calculation of what impact carrying this forward would actually have. But with that, Rania, I'm sure we're going to be back to this story. We'll do an emergency episode if it's necessary, because I think we do have all eyes on Iran right now, and on what unfolds in the coming hours, and especially with the threat of intensified strikes tonight. But
well, I think also real quick
Yeah.
before we move on to our next guest, I do just want to say that the Iranian foreign minister came out and basically said the ceasefire is basically over. And one of the ways that we've been able to kind of like understand that there's still some kind of ceasefire in place is after each tit for tat, you'll hear the Americans say these are self-defense strikes. This
Right.
doesn't mean the ceasefire is over. And you'll also hear the Iranians kind of say this doesn't mean the ceasefire is over. This is the first time I think I've heard them actually address the fact that this is basically annulling the ceasefire. So I think this is a bit of a more serious escalation in that sense.